Hey everyone, so I previously discussed the best conflicts in total drama, so now it's time for me to talk about the best friendships in total drama. And I feel like friendships are a lot less consistent than conflicts, especially on this franchise, so it's going to be an interesting one to delve into. So, Beth and Lindsay is definitely one of the strongest friendships on the franchise. They bonded even before I had to pick them to be in her alliance, though you don't really see many of their moments in Ireland until they are both booted by Heather. Of course, they become the new BFFFLs over Katie and Sadie in action, and they have a lot of good moments together, while being one of the few friendships to actually hang out after the show. The next one I am discussing is Bridgette and Leshawna. Bridgette grew closer to Leshawna once the merge happened, and Leshawna stood up for Bridgette against Eva, and I liked their moments during this portion of the season. Their friendship was consistent throughout the 3 seasons, which is nice and rare. Crazy how they both got played by Al, and then they got stronger together by that single lady's spoof. Cameron and Zoey, I believe, is the strongest from the second generation. I felt like I had to include someone from the second generation, and there weren't many friendships from that generation overall. Overall, Cameron and Zoey did have some nice and somber moments between the two of them, especially at the end of Revenge of the Island, and they are both oddballs, so them being friends makes sense. Duncan and Owen is next. The male friendships on this franchise, especially with the first generation, are utter crap and extremely rare or inconsistent. What I will say about Duncan and Owen is that they had moments together throughout the 3 seasons where their friendship was strong, and they did have some nice moments together, so it's very consistent. So here is Gwen and Leshawna. In the first season, they were definitely the best and most defined friendship on the show, and I liked how they always supported one another. Even in action, they were fine until Gwen acted weird and Leshawna weirdly turned on her for Harold. That was just a mess. Gwen mentioned that they were still in contact after season 2, so that's cool, but they didn't interact in season 3 due to being on different teams and Leshawna's early boot. So, out of the trio that I see of Bridgette, Leshawna, and Gwen, I'm going to talk about Bridgette and Gwen next. I liked the moments they had in the mid-season, even before the teams merged in TDI, and they were a nice duo. When Leshawna came into the picture, they were a nice trio. Seeing how they kind of fell apart in the action aftermath, especially with Bridgette taking Trent's side over things, and them not speaking in the 3rd season at all due to being in different teams and Bridgette being eliminated early, kind of has this being the weakest friendship out of the 3 between the 3 women. So Jasmine and Samey are next. The 3rd generation cast barely had interactions in either direction, whether it's a friendship or a conflict, so to see a friendship, especially between 2 women, after the 2nd generation didn't have any, was very nice. Seeing them get together in the beginning of each episode together was very nice, and for Samey to get a pickup in confidence was needed, though it was kind of odd how Jasmine was quiet during the latter's boot. Noah and Owen definitely earned their spot on this list, and it's interesting because their friendship came later and not through the early seasons. It kind of seems like their friendship came out of nowhere due to Noah's very early elimination in Ireland and him not being in the 2nd season. But from what we saw on World Tour on Team Chris is really hot, they had a very great dynamic despite being 2 very different people. And of course they built on this in this spinoff where Owen actually had to be the mature one and Noah was more aloof and immature. Another friendship from the generation and from the infamous trio is Cameron and Mike. This mainly comes off as it being about Cameron helping Mike and relying on Mike, as Cameron found out about Mike's disorder, and it was nice that they had that moment together, but it was always through the lens of helping Mike. And in All Stars, Cameron just became very needy. Either way, it's a strong male friendship in the 2nd generation, and there wasn't a lot of that anyway, so I'm putting them on the list. Of course, I had to mention one friendship from the spin-off, and the strongest friendship, in my opinion, is Geoff and Brody. It was very nice to see Geoff have an actual friend that actually had his back the entire time in Brody, and he was also had to be the mature one and to help guide Brody, as the latter is very immature and is more naive. So they had a great balance there. They did have their trials and tribulations throughout the season, but it wasn't too dramatic. And overall, you really like their positive attitude and how much they really support and love each other as friends. So now I'm going to go into the honorable mentions. And since I just spoke about Geoff, I might as well talk about his other known friendship in Duncan, DJ, and Geoff. Overall, the three of them were pretty nice outside of them bullying Carol, especially since male friendships are rare in total drama, but the dynamics were not very strong and faded after the first season, and you don't really understand the dynamic between each two of them, or instead of them as a trio overall. Duncan, DJ, and Geoff all had very distinct and different personalities, so seeing them interact was nice though. Zoey and Gwen earned their spot on the honorable mentions. They are both quote-unquote protagonist characters of their generations, and the interactions between both generations were lacking, so seeing them interact was cool. They did have a cool dynamic, but it's only for a few episodes in All Stars for me to put on the actual list. If they interacted more from the beginning of the season to the end, I think they would have made it onto the actual list. Cameron and Gwen is another intergeneration friendship, and the two of them started interacting more from the point where Cameron switches onto the villain's team, and they are actually good friends towards one another. This friendship got a lot more focus than the other friendship that I just mentioned in Zoey and Gwen, and it carried through on the finale. Though it's kind of weird that Gwen became a part of that trio. Anyways, a friendship from the spin-off that really stood out to me was between Kitty and Owen. I really enjoyed their friendship throughout the spin-off season, and how they are forced to be the serious middlemen compared to the more serious partners who are more aloof and love-struck. They had a lot of cool interactions, and I liked how it was very platonic. These two are generally more immature and childish naturally, but they were forced to be more mature, and they had to be more mature together. Duncan and Zoey actually surprised me. For the few episodes that they were on a team together, they had a nice set of interactions where she believes the good in Duncan while he's trying to prove her wrong as he's trying to be a bad boy, but he never really gets annoyed with her, which interests me because Duncan gets annoyed with everyone a lot and very quickly. So the last friendship in the honorable mention section is Bridgette and Courtney. They only interacted in the first season mainly, which is a negative, but it was nice seeing the two of them vent to one another about their issues and have friendly moments with one another. It was when Bridgette had solo interactions outside of Geoff, and Courtney wasn't a complete monster like she was in the latter seasons. So that is my quick list on the notable friendships on the franchise. There isn't really a whole lot to get into because they don't focus on friendships too much and they're less consistent. But from the ones that are given focus, they are pretty nice despite having some flaws overall. So I know the next video of TD that I'm going to make is about the most contrived TD eliminations, as that is different from the most unfair or rigged eliminations that I discussed a few videos ago. Thank you all and have a nice day.